Donc, bonjour à tous et bienvenue à ce débat en ligne du 39e Festival Jean Rouch pour le film A Shape of Things to Come de JP Sniadecki et Lisa Malloy. So welcome to this online Q&A of the film A Shape of Things to Come by JP Sniadecki and Lisa Malloy. The film is presented in the international competition. I would like to thank very much JP Sniadecki and Lisa Malloy for being with us. Hello.
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 And so JP, it's not your first time with us. We've already screened Iron Ministry and maybe Human, but not in competition, I think. And you came for a masterclass too a few years ago. So welcome back again. And Lisa, it's a pleasure to meet you. And I would also like to say thank you to Julien Farenc, who will moderate the Q&A. Julien is a film programmer at the Cinémathèque du documentaire in Centre Pompidou in Paris. Donc, je remercie vivement JP Sniadecki, Lisa Malloy. JP Sniadecki a déjà participé au festival avec son film Iron Ministry, montré en compétition. Il est également venu pour une masterclass. Julien Farenc animera la discussion. Il est programmateur à la Cinémathèque du documentaire au Centre Pompidou. On va donc commencer par un premier temps de débat donc entre les trois participants et puis on ouvrira les questions au public. Vous pourrez poser vos questions oralement en cliquant la petite main électronique et sinon les poser par chat. So we'll have a first moment of discussion between the three of you and then we'll open the discussion to the audience. So let's go. Julien.
Premièrement, just a few words in French. Merci au Festival Jean Rouch pour cette proposition qui me touche d'autant plus qu'on a eu la chance, le dernier jour avant le deuxième confinement en France, de pouvoir projeter le film en avant-première au Centre Pompidou. Donc c'était un grand plaisir de le revoir sur un grand écran, d'autant que les deux cinéastes ici présents n'ont pas eu cette chance, puisque malheureusement, à chaque fois, les séances ont, je crois, été annulées, en tous les cas en Europe. Donc, je crois que vous venez de voir le film. Le film est le portrait d'un personnage assez singulier. Et la première question, peut-être celle qu'on peut se poser, c'est « How did you meet Sundog ?»
Well, first, we'll just also say merci beaucoup to Jean Rouch Film Festival and to the whole team. It's an honor to be with you guys. We wish we could be in person, and thank you very much to Julien for supporting or moderating the Q&A and for programming the film at Centre Georges Pompidou, the last screening before the end of the world. We, met Sundog in the middle of making a film called El Mar La Mar that I co-directed with Joshua Bonetta. And Sundog actually appears in that film briefly. And we stayed in touch. We formed kind of a conversation, a discussion about possibly making a film with him. He had his critiques of El Mar La Mar and probably thought it didn't have enough of him in it. And so he started to entice me to come visit. Also, I was interested in spending more time in the desert. I had, when we were making El Mar La Mar, we had done a lot of hiking along migrant trails, bringing water and food and meeting people. And Sundog knew those trails, but he also knew other things about the desert, about the ecology, about the plants and the medicinal plants and the animals. And so I was intrigued to learn about the desert through his kind of healer's eyes. And so I started to go down there. And as I was getting more involved with it, I knew Lisa was very much engaged with spiritual ecology and interested in spending time in the desert as well. And so she and I agreed to shoot the film together with Sundog and started making trips.
Yeah. Yeah, I had never been to the desert before in the southwest of the US. So I was really, I'm very deep interest in plants, and yeah, I guess I met Sundog obviously through JP, and really had a nice connection over similar interests.
Donc, ouais. Donc, alors, ils ont rencontré Sundog à l'occasion d'un autre tournage pour le film Elmar d'Elmar, et dans lequel il apparaît, et sont restés en contact et ont voulu voir s'il était possible de faire un film centré sur ce personnage-là. Et Lisa a voulu faire partie du projet aussi parce qu'elle s'intéresse à l'écologie et a un intérêt pour les plantes, la nature, et c'est pour ça qu'il semblait tout naturel qu'ils travaillent sur le film ensemble.
But was it shot in Arizona?
Yeah, it was shot in Arizona near the border of Mexico and the United States in the Sonoran Desert. And exclusively in a kind of region of southeastern Arizona that's from about 11 miles from the border down to right up to the border, in a swath of land around the community of Aravaca, which is
right.
to the west of Nogales, but to the east of Ajo and the Devil's Highway, which maybe some of you know from the Urea book.
Donc le film a... sorry, did you want to say something more? No. Donc le film a été tourné, il a bien été tourné en Arizona, près de la frontière avec le Mexique et dans le désert du Sonoran. Donc c'est là qu'a été tourné le film, et pas très loin de la communauté Aravaca.
Would you qualify Sundog as a survivalist? Or does that mean something to you?
I think Sundog might qualify himself as a survivalist. Yeah, but obviously I think one thing that we were really interested in is not necessarily to depict Sundog, as like as the truth of Sundog, but more to play with his many contradictions and paradoxes. And I mean, all humans are full of contradictions. It's hard to pinpoint someone as something. So I think we were more interested in the more contradictions of a survivalist. But I think he might call himself one.
Yeah. You want to translate that and then?
Yeah. Donc oui, on pourrait le qualifier comme survivaliste, mais après, on voulait. L'intention n'était pas forcément de le montrer en tant que tel, Sundog, mais plutôt présenter ses contradictions et on a tous des contradictions, et c'est un peu ce qui le rend humain, de montrer un peu les contrariétés dans son action survivaliste, même si lui se montrerait comme tel, sûrement.
And I would just add, like what Lisa was saying, the contradictions are important. You know, he's surviving a kind of speculative future, a near future. But this is the character in the film, but the actual, biographical Sundog, he's a survivalist who also likes to go to Walmart and get, chicken breasts that he can microwave. He's a hunter, healer, but he also, will take advantage of free food left out by human resources, which is like a kind of a food distribution network in Arizona. So, he is sort of scavenging and scrounging and trying. His ideal would be to live off the desert entirely, but as we know, that's quite difficult in the sort of dominant culture, as he refers to our civilization.
Donc oui, son idylle serait de vivre totalement séparé de la civilisation, mais pourtant le film voulait justement retranscrire ces contradictions, le fait que oui, il va chasser pour se nourrir, mais il continue d'aller au supermarché, le Walmart des États-Unis. Et voilà, c'est justement ces contradictions qui font le film.
there is, I think for we, the Europeans, I mean, at least French spectators, maybe we can see that man as a Trumpist figure. I mean, someone which is against the government and his installations, electronic devices of the border. And so my question is, yes, is a man with a lot of contradictions, and one of his contradiction is if is fighting the government and his and their installations. No, sorry for my English.
Under what?
You mean he's fighting the government, yet you also see him as someone who would be pro-government?
No, more of a Trump supporter.
Yeah, kind of
a populist figure.
Populist, yeah.
Do you have any comments about that?
I think that's really interesting, and that's one thing we were really trying to do with the film, is to keep it so open, is not to necessarily disclose much of the kind of normal signifiers of, you know, this person is right-leaning or left-leaning, because yeah, like Sundog is very much against, I guess, the dominant culture is kind of his fight, or his antithesis. His enemy is all of us living our, you know, life. And I think he thinks of himself as, you know, trying to be outside and very critical of this existence that we all are leading. But yeah.
And, you know, if that's the other thing, is like, we're not trying to valorize this figure or make him a sort of an iconic figure, some sort of hero for the anti-border wall, you know, pro-immigration figure. He's supposed to be a disturbing and sort of a disturbing figure, a distressing figure who doesn't sort of shut down possibilities for people from a whole range of political backgrounds to sort of engage with and deal with. His critique of us, the modern civilization, which is that we are violent with every moment that we breathe, with every way that we live. And he's trying to reduce, even though we see him kill a javelina, and people think this is a very violent scene, that javelina was already dead. It wasn't feeling anything. It's just nerve system twitching. But people watch that, you know, very disturbed. But the truth is that when you sustain the meat industry that we have today, you're actually doing far greater violence to the world and to animals than a man shooting a javelina for his food and for his animals to eat. So it's just sort of raising this individual as a distressing, disturbing figure, you know, hoping to provoke some questioning of our own relationship to the land around us and to the way that we secure food and secure a sense of meaning in the world.
Donc oui, la figure de Sundog, il voulait pas forcément le catégoriser, il est un peu ouvert à l'interprétation, mais quoi qu'il en soit, dans le film, il n'y avait aucune intention de valoriser son mode de vie et ses opinions. C'était plutôt pour le montrer comme un personnage dérangeant, et justement, à travers Sundog, de questionner notre mode de vie, justement de comparer certaines scènes du film qui paraissent assez violentes lorsqu'il va chasser et qu'il retire les entrailles de l'animal qu'il est sur le point de manger, comparer cela à notre civilisation moderne qui pour Sundog justement paraît violente.
I think that one of the quality of the film is the very strong narrative aspect, and there is it's Sundog as a kind of relation with nature, which is very, very strong, and your film emphasizes this aspect. I mean, from start to the end of the film, because it's very hard to survive in this alien environment, which is the desert. So was it an idea when you were editing the film, that to show this very strong relation with nature?
Yeah, I think that relationship with his Sundog's, you call it the ecology that he lives in and his environment and that landscape, was definitely kind of what pulled us into this film. I think just probably the main reason why we were interested in working with Sundog. And I think JP and I are both really interested in a mode of like, and I think we sort of discovered this through working with Sundog, is sort of a mode of filming that that really tries to blur, or that embraces like this blurring of the ecology or the natural environment and the human experience or the human body. So I think that was kind of a thread that we centered on while filming, and I mean, there's lots to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think also, I'm sorry, do you want to translate that first, Molly, before I go on?
I can if you like, yeah. Donc Lisa voulait dire que oui, on voulait montrer Sundog en étant totalement en accord avec son environnement, et comme film, l'écologie et avec l'expérience humaine est un fil conducteur du film.
Yeah, I think it's another reason why we are in the film kind of pulling away from a kind of, you know, full portrait or some sort of authentic portrait of this individual, because if you take away the biographical details, the backstory, the psychology, all the things that a lot of people might be expecting from a film like this, then it centers precisely what you say, is that interface and that intersection of the human body and the natural environment, of animals, of plants. I mean, I don't think that the film lets go of the human in some kind of post-human, you know, framework, but it tries to decenter kind of, you know, the kinds of expectations we might have about a film subject and a story, so that we can more forcefully or more powerfully dig into how, you know, one might dig up verbena, or might make medicines out of poppies, or milk the, you know, poison from toads, or, you know, secure food from local, you know, game, or deal with weather patterns and coming monsoons, and living with snakes, these kinds of things. Like this kind of imbrication is possible, I think, in part because we don't dig into who he is, sort of in any sort of biographical way.
Donc le film n'a pas d'intention autobiographique, c'est plutôt de montrer les pratiques d'un homme, comment on peut survivre dans de telles conditions dans la nature, laissé à soi-même, et de prendre du recul avec le protagoniste, contrairement à d'autres documentaires où on s'intéresse plutôt aux personnages, donc plutôt de savoir comment on pourrait se réchauffer, comment on pourrait manger, comment on pourrait se soigner.
I have another question on your relationship with Sundog, because in some way we have a strong impression that you shot the film with Sundog. You're not shooting Sundog.
Yeah, well, so this, I think the whole idea of the film came about through this sort of us trio getting to know each other, and then really seeing that Sundog has these fantasies of destruction to certain like symbols of the dominant culture. And, you know, in this landscape, he came to this area as a sort of like escape, right? And then of course, the reality is that there's military aircraft sounds constantly. There's all sorts of technology that's in surveillance mechanisms. So he's really, you know, it's not really a paradise. So I think one of his, we were talking a lot together about how to bring these fantasies to the screen, to into a film, and I think that kind of was a base of our collaboration together. Was all of us kind of exploring that and how that might come across.
Yeah, I think for us collaborating with Sundog was really a vital process and very generative and very creative. You know, we don't do the thing where we have the reflexive moment of the filmmakers talking with the film subject about how we're going to do a scene. We still maintain this kind of third person, you know, you could call it like a third person perspective, but I do think, and Julien, you're picking up on this, if you attend to the way it's filmed and you think beyond, you know, the need for a very, you know, very explicit self-reflexive moment, you do see the registration of our bodies and our sort of co-writing, so that we're all writing together the film in the act of filming and in the act of planning. So I'm glad that that comes about. That I think, you know, maybe some film viewers might feel as if they don't know how to read the status of the way that we are filming and the relationship. And so that becomes a really disturbing question mark for them about what is the nature of the relationship between Lisa and JP and Sundog. And we purposely leave that open for audiences to either be sensitive to or to be troubled by, and not give any kind of easy answers.
Donc la question du film était de vraiment savoir comment on pouvait retranscrire les fantasmes de destruction de la culture dominante, ce que souhaiterait Sundog. Et pour cela, il y avait vraiment une volonté d'avoir un regard à la troisième personne et de ce fait de s'éloigner un peu du sujet. Et ainsi, ça peut aussi paraître un peu étrange pour le spectateur de se demander quelle est la relation entre les réalisateurs et Sundog. Donc, c'est un peu laissé en suspens pour vraiment laisser le ressenti des spectateurs prendre le dessus.
I have one more thing to add to that. And in the editing, we shared the editing with Sundog, you know, as best we could. We didn't live in Arizona, but we would take, you know, a projector and speakers and watch the rushes together and watch some assemblies, and then also share with him some cuts remotely over Vimeo. And, you know, we had some discussions about certain scenes that shouldn't be in or should be in. He wanted lightning bolts to strike when he smokes the toad venom, but we couldn't do that. We don't have a big budget, so we couldn't make the lightning bolts. So disappointed him with that. But Lisa, you know, made that clear leader where she taped all the different plants and seeds and insect parts onto that, and he loved that. So that was the consolation prize from the lightning bolts that he wanted, because that's what he says he sees when he smokes the 5-MeO DMT from the toad, from the Buffo alvarius venom.
Et JP voulait justement rajouter que les rushs étaient regardés avec Sundog au jour le jour, et qu'il avait son mot à dire sur comment étaient présentées les scènes. Et il racontait justement une anecdote que Sundog voulait des effets spéciaux pour la scène du crapaud et que c'était pas forcément dans le budget du film. Donc voilà. Donc il y avait un certain compromis dans la réalisation du film.
Okay, it's yeah, Sundog is a very strong figure. I mean, we have the impression by watching him that he could make much more films in the next years. But I just wonder how many times did you spend with him?
How many times? Well,
Yeah.
we would sort of, we're living north, so we would drive to, it's a long drive, we would drive all of our gear in the car to visit, and when we would visit, it would be like maybe, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
We would visit like a couple weeks, and you know, just we would live with some, not with him in his trailer, but we would live right on his property area. And yeah, we just kind of, we would go whenever we had gas money or, you know, time. So I don't know, we went over 3 years, maybe like 3 times a year, right? 3 years?
Yeah, about every season we would go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so every winter, spring, and summer and fall, any reason to go down to the desert is a good reason. So we would, I think we probably spent, if each trip was about 2 weeks and there's 4 per, so what is that? 8 weeks, about like 24 weeks, 18 weeks, something like that with him making the film.
All right.
But over 3 years.
Okay.
Different seasons. But yeah, he would love to have more movies,
Yeah.
I'm sure. If there's anybody in the audience who wants to
Or
go
a
make a movie
TV
with them.
show that
Yeah.
could maybe be more didactic, you would love that.
Yeah, we can give you
Yeah.
his email address or his phone number, and anyone can go.
Maybe you can call some producers.
We were thinking about making one called Hog Palace
Yeah.
with all of his pigs.
He now has a bunch of piglets, he raises pigs.
Donc juste pour traduire ce qui a été dit, sur 3 ans, ils se sont vus à 3 reprises pour quelques semaines, lorsqu'ils avaient les moyens de pouvoir filmer sur le terrain, et donc peut-être entre 18 et 24 semaines en tout.
Do you have more plans to shoot in the desert for the next years to come?
Yeah, we have another project that we've already shot quite a bit of, but we still need to make some more production trips. And with coronavirus, it makes it very difficult. How about?
Yeah, very, very hard in these times, but we love to be in the desert. We love that environment and that getting to know that landscape more and more.
Yeah, it's
Who
important.
knows when?
Yeah, it's important for us also to point out that we are always outsiders in that desert. We are not experts and we are not indigenous, you know, obviously, to that land. It's important to point out that land is the land of the Tohono O'odham people. And so we're just visitors when we go there. And, you know, we're hopefully going to make more projects and work on more research projects with colleagues like Jason De Leon, who works on the Undocumented Migrant Project. He's an anthropologist and visual anthropologist and archaeologist at UCLA, you know, and a lot of our friends and contacts down there have been open to making more projects. So hopefully if the United States can get the coronavirus act together, then we might make it back down there.
Ils espèrent pouvoir filmer de nouveaux projets dans le désert, mais tout est compliqué par la crise sanitaire, bien évidemment. Parce qu'ils adorent filmer là-bas, comme ils disaient.
Peut-être, je ne sais pas s'il y a des questions qui arrivent par le chat.
Vous pouvez lever les mains si vous souhaitez poser votre question. Vous cliquez la petite main bleue. Et sur le chat, Ludmila, est-ce que tu as des questions sur le chat?
Oui, on a quand même quelques questions. La première, c'est did Sundog had justice issues after shooting on military devices, for instance?
Did he have any justice issues?
Oh,
No, not so far.
no.
Une autre, par exemple, why Sundog? Why his name?
Oh, why the name Sundog?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, that is what his name.
yeah.
Right? Yeah. So why did he choose that name?
I think he chose that name out of a kind of irreverence for the survivalist circles that he's a part of, that he wants to be a part of, like survival skills. There are certain groups and gatherings that he likes to go to, and people were calling themselves names like, I don't know, Moon something, and he thought that it would fit his personality and also be a little bit flippant to the names that people were adopting as their like survivalist names. I think that's the reason. That's how I remember he explained it to us, I think, right?
Yeah. Also, sundogs are like a phenomenon. People probably know in the sky, like when a rainbow happens and the like refraction of light. So I don't know if there's.
Molly, tu veux
Oui, vas-y, je vais le faire. Donc, on ne sait pas vraiment pourquoi il s'appelle Sundog, c'est lui qui s'est nommé de la sorte, mais c'est sûrement dû au cercle de survivalistes dans lequel qu'il côtoie. Et donc, ils ont souvent tendance à se donner des surnoms de la sorte. Et c'est aussi peut-être un rapport avec le phénomène, la réfraction avec l'arc-en-ciel.
Je continue avec les questions ou...
Si, il y en a, ouais.
Il y a un commentaire assez long. First of all, congratulations for this portrait of a possible postmodern hedonist who apparently lives alone but likes being people. The rattlesnake is ubiquitous. For me, in your film, it represents both the lying shooter, Sundog, the migrant, or the drugs which pass through the cracks. Images showing the snake passing through the grids of the caddy. How did you cohabit with the rattlesnakes, literally and figuratively?
Well, literally, Sundog's garden has all sorts of amphibians and birds and bugs that he's like co-living with and embracing in his various homesteading activities. And so, there are snakes, rattlesnakes in the desert, and I think they really like his setup. So yeah, Sundog is not afraid of, or not, he's very comfortable around rattlesnakes. He's been bitten by one and I think almost died.
Yeah, almost died.
So I think that kind of like comfortability allowed us to be a lot more comfortable than we would normally be. And then, yeah, figuratively.
I really like the symbolism that that Florent is pointing out here. I mean, I think there's some interesting ways of thinking through those questions that are being discussed here about sort of how it represents this the shooter, the illicit things passing through borders and cages and walls. And how do you cohabit, how do you co-inhabit a space of something that's symbolically dangerous and scary and all these kinds of things? And I think that really points to the kind of like disturbing, but also like the kind of the atmosphere of acceptance also that Sundog creates, like Lisa was saying, he feeds everything around him, including, rattlesnakes if he has to. He picks up tarantulas with his hands. He feeds coyotes. He's not really interested in killing anything or hurting anything unless he needs to eat. He's not interested in killing just to be a sadistic person. And then the other thing that the person asked is that, do Mexican people have a presence in Sundog's thoughts? Yes. He actually was a smuggler for people to go across the border and got paid a lot of money to do it. And we were going to put that in the film, but we didn't fit that biographical detail. but he definitely is, he says he has an affinity for migrants. He will leave things for migrants, like water and food if he can. I think he's very conscious of the fact that we all might become migrants given the devastation of the environment and the approaching apocalypse if we continue destroying our environment the way we do and allowing, more fascist and totalitarian states to take shape and militarize our borders and stuff. We will be also without security and safety.
Donc,
But in the film, you do see some you hear migrants waking up and moving across the desert in the film, just, in a kind of indirect way. That's a way for the film and for viewers to understand another set of realities and experiences in the desert that are not with the privilege of Sundog, because Sundog is privileged as a white American citizen. He has a great deal of privilege as he moves through the desert and, lives his survivalist self.
Donc pour le premier point sur le serpent à sonnette, c'est très clairement représenté comme une menace pour les raisons que Ford la Palabra mentionne. Et donc d'autant qu'il a été mordu par un serpent à sonnette et a failli en mourir. Mais pourtant, il cohabite avec tout ce qui l'entoure, même la menace, il nourrit les serpents à sonnette, les coyotes qu'on voit à un moment dans le film. Et pour un autre point, Sundog a aidé des Mexicains à traverser, à infiltrer la frontière et les aide beaucoup, et il prend conscience que nous pourrions tous se retrouver dans cette situation-là de devoir quitter son pays d'origine pour des raisons politiques, économiques ou écologiques même.
There is also some question about how did you make the film literally, like the aesthetical choices or the technical devices you used, the camera, for instance. What is both your roles in the choice of filming?
I think we worked in a pretty fluid way, so there was no role really for anyone. I'd say Sundog had all sorts of roles as well, like location scout and what else? Gaffer. It was all natural light, so his headlamp was literally like the gaffer for the film. And then as far as filming, like we were using a C300, right? And we were using these really inexpensive lenses. One of them was 100 to 300 like photographic zoom lens. Another was like a 50 millimeter old, like kind of janky zoom, like not zoom, fixed lens. Anyway, so we had, just a few lenses in this camera, and when you're filming in the desert, is so bright, so much sun, and it's hard to see the screen on the C300. So I think a lot of, and we're both, I think, really interested in a sort of filming from, not from the head, but more from like the body and the gut. So that sort of interest combined with the fact that you can't really see what you're filming most of the time is really, you're just kind of like following processes and movements, and aesthetically we were really interested in like what kind of not mistakes, but what sort of things can come in the way that are not planned, the spontaneity.
Au niveau de la caméra, alors c'était un C30 avec quelques lentilles, donc caméra portée, et comme la lumière est très brillante là-bas, c'était un peu difficile de savoir ce qu'on filmait, donc c'était un peu le tournage était un peu instinctif et esthétiquement, c'était assez intéressant de voir sur quelles erreurs il pouvait y avoir à l'écran. Donc, il filmait comme ça, sans vraiment pouvoir vérifier.
Il y a Yuri qui demande aussi, what was your biggest difficulty when you shoot the movie?
Sundog.
Yes.
That kind of responds to a question that came earlier about what did this lonely man never, or what was it, something about never, would you never thought you would experience, and stubbornness. You know, he's a special character, and you know, a good friend of ours, but also can be a real pain in the ass.
Very misogynistic.
And misogyny.
Yes. And ageism.
And ageist.
Yeah.
So those things make it very difficult.
Yeah, I think one thing is like, you know, when you're filming with someone, you have to sort of accept them and not maybe be so emotionally invested, or like there's like a certain like protection that you have to create for yourself sometimes, depending. Also, it's so dependent on who you're working with, but with Sundog, I think it was surprising for me and us that there was maybe that sort of, yeah, that you needed to create a sort of like barrier of like acceptance of someone, and also just realizing they are who they are, and you know, that's just who they are.
Donc oui, Sundog était un peu une personne difficile à filmer, un peu têtue et bah, comme il disait, un peu misogyne, agiste, bon. Et justement, lorsque le documentaire s'intéresse à une personne un peu détestable, il faut voilà, accepter la personne telle qu'elle est et prendre ses distances, ne pas vraiment être intimidé ou le prendre personnellement, les propos, ses opinions.
There is also a question, do you write about how you make your movies?
Do we write about it?
Yeah, about how do you shoot, or how do you make the movies? Some articles or anything?
For this film, we've had some interviews. We had an interview in a magazine called Cinéathèque with Scott McDonald. I think we talk a little bit about the filming there. I have an article about an earlier movie in Visual Anthropology Review from many years ago, maybe 5 years ago. But together to talk about this movie, like very explicitly how we shot it, how we made it, we have not written anything, right? Do we plan to write anything?
Maybe, I don't.
Donc rien n'a été retranscrit à l'écrit, simplement une interview avec le magazine Cinéaste et dirigé par Scott Donald, mais sinon rien. Et par le passé, dans d'autres films, Visual Anthropology Review. Mais aucune intention d'écrire quoi que ce soit. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions?
I see a question from Elsa Mori, who is also in competition with her film, and it's thanks for this great movie. I was wondering where come from the images at the end of the film.
Maybe they're talking about animation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the animation that is.
I think they're talking about the credits. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so that's a bunch of plants material and flowers, petals that was collected around Sundog's trailer area where he lives. and then it was taped onto like clear 16mm film leader, and then digitized. So it's from Sundog's backyard.
Yeah, so it's from the images come from the desert, like very much like materially, and Lisa arranging them very meticulously and carefully over a long period of time, and then running that through a
while JP was
film
driving
scanner.
back home.
We were just a car full of seeds and petals and plants bouncing everywhere.
Donc le générique a été fait à partir de pétales, feuilles et d'autres plantes collées sur une pellicule 16 mm, et donc voilà, et ensuite numérisé. Donc voilà, c'est du fait main, un générique fait à la main, fait maison.
And there is also a question about the title of the movie. How did you choose it?
Well, I think we were, do you want to answer this?
Go ahead.
I think I'll start. I think we were drawn to the way that it pushes a viewer and for us to think about a speculative future, a kind of near foreboding, dark future moment. And also a kind of provocation of the audience and for us to think about what this figure and his actions might mean for all of us. Like Lisa said, here's someone who tries to pull away from society and the dominant culture and becomes so frustrated and inundated that he takes to, an act of eco-terrorist violence in response. But he also shows a way of living on the land that is actually more sustainable and more more sustainable than our current practices. The title also comes from an H.G. Wells book, which it's not necessarily a direct reference, but his book is called The Shape of Things to Come, and ours is A Shape. So it's not sort of saying it's going to be this way, it's just one possibility and for one possible individual. But in that book, it talks about sort of a dictatorship by the air, that there's this way in which, the nation states fall apart and there's this benevolent dictatorship where they abolish religion, and it's an ethnocentric vision of the future, but that vision is upheld by control of the airways. And so where Sundog lives is constantly airplanes and a militarization of the desert going on, not just above, but also on the ground. And so we also want to make reference to that kind of, that very, it's already happening now, and it'll probably be even more ubiquitous that we have a constant military presence. I mean, as you see in the United States, as soon as something happens, the police are already out in tanks with assault rifles, and it's very, very scary how quickly they can take over a town or a city.
Donc le titre voulait nous faire penser à un avenir à la fois sombre et incertain, et de confronter le spectateur à un avenir qui pourrait mal se dérouler, se demander pourquoi un homme pourrait se réduire à faire de l'écoterrorisme. Mais c'est aussi une référence indirecte au livre de H.G. Wells, où là, ça s'appelle The Shape of Things to Come et non pas A Shape of Things to Come. Donc, se questionner sur la militarisation de l'environnement naturel, et il faisait aussi un parallèle avec la situation actuelle aux États-Unis, donc la présence policière assez omniprésente, et les conséquences qu'on connaît. I had a question. I don't know whether I can slip it in here. Yes? I had a first question about who Sundog was talking to on the phone. That there are a few scenes when he's talking on the phone and we're not exactly sure who he's who he's having a conversation with, whether it's a family member or not. Donc, je voulais juste savoir, il y a des scènes dans le film où il parle au téléphone et je voulais simplement savoir à qui il s'adressait.
So yeah, Sundog has some that's his son that he's talking to, who lives in San Francisco, and that's his son does like visit him sometimes where Sundog is. So I think he comes like maybe once a year or something.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe not. It's but anyways, they have a good relationship, I guess, and Sundog is always kind of enticing him to come visit, you know, because he is, I think, kind of lonely and, you know, kind of craves that human contact sometimes, although maybe he wouldn't admit it. I don't know. Yeah, so that's his family, someone from his family.
Right. So that's the biographical detail, but in the movie, it doesn't really matter who he's talking to.
Mm-hmm.
In the film, what it's really about is, you know, the longing for, you know, human contact, the lack of safety and health in urban environments or environments that are not so sort of that are more populated than the desert. So he's kind of making an appeal to someone and also making a judgment about that place, right? And then also in the moment of the pandemic, it's another instance of the sort of severity of social distancing. I mean, he's the ultimate social distancer. And yet he's still, you know, this is the way maybe he can continue to have a relationship with someone he cares about and also be able to send them the medicines that they won't get by the Western biomedicine that is created, the pharmaceutical companies create. Like, he knows that what he's able to provide will be a far superior medicine than what is normally given to people in those kinds of environments.
Donc il s'agissait bien de son fils à qui il parlait au téléphone, qui habite à San Francisco, qui le visite parfois, une fois par an. Et ces scènes voulaient simplement retranscrire le contact humain, puisqu'il disait justement c'était la distanciation sociale à son paroxysme, le fait qu'il soit vraiment totalement détaché de la civilisation, mais que lui tout de même pouvait créer des remèdes qui pouvaient servir les autres populations, les personnes habitant ensemble en ville.
Il y a encore quelques questions. Est-ce qu'on a encore le temps?
Yeah, I think we have time for one or two more questions. Well, depending if JP and Lisa have time, or are you exhausted? Can you?
We're happy to talk with you guys. It's an honor to be here. So
Yeah.
please, whatever makes sense for you. I just wish we could have a drink in our hands, but it's too early here.
For us, it's good time now.
Yeah.
There is a simple question about the toad venom and how Sundog did get the idea of smoking toad venom. It is current in America, or I guess no.
Yeah, that's it's called a Colorado River toad, or Bufo alvarez, right, is its scientific name, Latin name. But it is a toad that secretes this pure 5-MeO-DMT to kind of protect itself from potential dangers, other animals, or but so if humans smoke this dried 5-MeO-DMT or pure DMT, it elicits a trip. So I'll talk more about it.
Oh, just where Sundog learned it from, I'm not exactly sure. But the toad comes out during the monsoon season. You'll see them all over. You have to be careful when you're driving or stepping so you don't hurt them. it's a practice that when you do the research, and I haven't done maybe enough research, but supposedly there is not there's not a record of it being something practiced by indigenous people of the area, but I am suspicious of that particular claim that the science community put out. But it has become more and more popular. It's not illegal. And I think Vice magazine, which is like this terrible media platform, did a video about the toad trip. It's called The Toad. Michael Pollan, in his book, How to Change Your Mind, which is about the healing qualities, the medicinal therapeutic qualities of psychedelic drugs like LSD or mushroom psilocybin or 5-MeO-DMT or toad, writes about it. He does the trip. So it's something that people know about. And I don't really know the origins of where someone thought to smoke it, because if you swallow it, it doesn't do anything. It has to be incinerated. But you can, you can go to the desert and you can look for these toads. But one thing to keep in mind is that if you milk the toad, I think it takes at least 4 weeks, if not more, for that poison to redevelop. So I would be cautious about taking away all the poison of one toad. It leaves it defenseless. If you milk one, maybe just milk one gland, because you are extracting something from the toad. So something to keep in mind.
Donc, ils ne sont pas sûrs d'où Sundog a appris qu'il pouvait se droguer à partir des sécrétions du crapaud, mais donc il s'agit de sécrétions pour que le crapaud puisse se défendre de DMT. Donc voilà, et il disait qu'on les trouvait souvent à la saison des moussons, donc voilà, qu'il y en avait beaucoup dans les environs et que ça prenait 5 semaines, voire plus, pour que la sécrétion puisse se renouveler, et ça laissait le crapaud sans défense. Donc si vous souhaitez fumer les sécrétions de crapaud, attendez un peu, ne prenez pas tout d'un coup. Voilà. pensez au crapaud.
There is also a question about how your movie highlights the ecological speech of Sundog.
What do they want to know about the ecological speech?
Like the sound?
It was like how the cinematic form of the film goes with the ecological thought of Sundog, something like that. I'm not sure. En français, Molly, selon vous, comment la forme de votre film souligne son propos écologique?
I think it's how in your opinion, the aesthetic underlines the ecological speech within the film. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a good question. I mean, in some ways, just making a film itself, about him and surveilling him in the desert mimics some of the surveillance that the Border Patrol would be enacting that, pisses him off. At the same time, so that's why we have some of those really sort of long focal length shots, sort of filming him in the landscape, tracking him to sort of draw sort of attention to the surveillance of the desert. But then we also have these, Lisa's an amazing cinematographer, as she said, filming from the body in a very Chick Strand kind of cinema that is about, breaking free from, it's like a judging mind, I guess. I mean, you can speak about, I don't need to speak about this, but like to sort of to conduct oneself in a way where you take your cues cinematographically from the landscape and from the beings around you, rather than imposing. But I think our film goes between multiple registers. There's times when we're really close and really intimate, and showing that kind of interpenetration of the natural world and Sundog. Sundog is a part of the natural world, and other times where it's more distant and surveilling and disturbing. I mean, it's all probably disturbing.
Yeah, I just add that also like sound was really, really important for us making this film, and you know, the sound of the ecology, but also the technological sounds of the surveillance. And we worked with Ernst Carroll, who's an amazing sound artist. And he kind of brought in this like, what's it called? Acoustic, electrical, like playing with these sounds as well. So like, yeah, I think the sense of ecology for me is really like created actually through sound, and through that kind of like spatiality of sound and the layers of sound that exists really uniquely in the desert, like the layers of wind and maybe the sounds coming from the ground, the bugs, the grasses. Yeah.
Donc oui, il pense peut-être que la surveillance de Sundog pourrait renvoyer à celle effectuée par la douane aux alentours. Et pour eux, c'était important, comme il disait tout à l'heure, de filmer le corps, et ça permettait peut-être de se libérer des jugements à l'égard de Sundog et de son mode de vie. Et Lisa voulait aussi dire que le son était très important dans le film, non seulement les sons environnements, mais les sons électroniques qu'on entend pour vraiment créer une ambiance dans le film.
Du coup, avec ça, il y a peut-être deux questions qui peuvent se rejoindre de Romain Plume et d'un spectateur anonyme. How, if you had have a word for young directors about making a documentary film, and a question again, how do you deal with all the activities about making a movie, like organize yourself with the cameras, the sound recording, and all the devices?
What advice would you give
For
to people making documentaries, young directors wanting to make documentaries?
I don't know, I'm pretty young. I don't have advice for young people.
I mean, we were watching a screening that Northwestern University Block Cinema did of a filmmaker named Fox Maxey, an indigenous filmmaker. And they said, there are no rules. Don't listen to anyone who tries to force you to follow the rules. Just make what you want to make. So I would say that, at least in this country, in North America, in the United States and Canada, I would say that documentary is very, the mainstream is very narrow and very limited. And a lot of the discourse around it is very reductive. So I would encourage you all to not let that paralyze you. I don't know how it is in France, but I would not let anyone who tells you they know how to make a movie, don't listen to them. Anyone who will talk to you about the movie you want to make and offer you ideas and engage with you as a creative colleague, that's an important relationship, and continue to nurture that. And if it's helpful, continue to develop that. But don't listen to anyone who tells you they know what they're doing. And then I would say not to wait for the money. If you can, because you'll wait forever and you'll try to please everybody. If you can, make a film for very little money. If you can have access to a camera, what you can invest is your time and your effort. And that's, and make that an experience, make that the reward of making the documentary, which is the journey and the discovery and the exploration, not the end goal of what you want the movie to achieve and where you want it to go. I mean, these are very basic things, but I think they're important to keep in mind, because we get sort of told to stay in our place and to not make our movie and to listen to the supposed gatekeepers and authorities. But I say, forget them and go make your movie with whatever you can, with your friends, with the world around you, and work on being able to make any moment cinematic. So right now we're all trapped inside during the pandemic. But if you want to develop yourself as a cinematographer, as a filmmaker, you should be able to go to one corner of your room and make that into a movie or some sort of cinematic moment. So I would say practice with where you are while you can now and not wait.
Yeah. Okay, I would add that when you're shooting and you've decided you're working on a project and you're going forward with that, I think it's really important to like watch your footage, just like watch all of it, just sit and watch everything that you've shot and not be so judgmental or decide one thing is really good and one thing is really bad, because and I think it's really important just to kind of like fall in love with your footage and like fall in like that sort of like that like affinity for what you're filming is so important to sustain your, you know, the grueling hours of like all of that comes with filming. It's you have to have that established affinity in order for it to really come together, I think.
Donc les 3 conseils seraient, dans un premier temps, de ne pas écouter les critiques, de faire ce que vous avez envie de réaliser, de ne pas se limiter au jugement extérieur et de vraiment, si vous êtes motivé par quelque chose, d'aller jusqu'au bout de votre projet. Et un autre point, de ne pas attendre les financements, de faire avec les moyens que vous avez à votre disposition et de profiter même du confinement pour vous perfectionner, de filmer dans votre temps libre avec votre téléphone ou tout ce que vous avez à votre disposition. Et le dernier point que Lisa voulait ajouter était de vraiment regarder son travail de manière minutieuse et ne pas être trop... ne pas avoir trop peur des erreurs rencontrées ou de ne pas se rabaisser et elle dit que c'est important de vraiment, pour progresser, prendre le temps de vraiment regarder son travail et dans le but de s'améliorer.
On va peut-être, I think we'll have to end Q&A soon, but I would like to ask Julien, maybe
Yes.
you have something else to add, or
No. Thank you.
and JP and Lisa, have you any comment, or now we can say goodbye?
No, just thank you so much. Really appreciate all of you. It's really an honor for us.
I'd like to thank you, Julien, Lisa, and JP for joining us. I hope the French audience will enjoy the film as much as I did, and the encounter with Sundog, his world and his fantasies. And I hope to see you soon with your next film at the Jean Rouch.
Yeah, we're expecting that.
We'll get it ready.
And with a glass of wine.
Exactly.
Donc voilà, eh bien on va tous se dire au revoir. Donc je remercie chaleureusement Julien, Lisa et JP pour leur participation, pour leur film également. J'espère que vous aurez tous autant de bonheur qu'on en a eu à découvrir le monde, les fantasmes et les rêves de Sundog, et continuez donc à regarder les films sur la plateforme. Il y en a plein. Voilà, eh bien, so goodbye and thank you again.
Merci.
Merci Julien.
Merci.